So today's Lean Agile Glasgow, we have Elle Fitz. Elle Fitz is an agile coach, product coach, and she's worked with many large organizations around the world that you have heard of, like Pixar and Adidas and Lego and many, many others. So she's an experienced agile and product coach and leadership coach. And that's what we're here for today. We're here to learn about a bit about agile from her. Her talk is called Being Deliberate About Team Building. And with that, I'll pass it over to Elle. Elle, welcome.
Hi, nice to meet all of you. I do live in Scotland, believe it or not. It's just that when I immigrated in 2004, we were a bit of a unicorn kind of resource in terms of skill set. So I always found myself just working back home in Silicon Valley or the EU, bizarrely, with the odd pockets of banking. So it's nice to see all of you, and hopefully I'll get to see more of you. But thank you for coming to my talk. I really am not a talk person, mostly because I kind of am of the view that so much great thought leadership has already been put out there. I haven't a clue what unique thing I have to share or say, but hopefully you'll get something from this. And it's just, again, as always, from just my coaching perspective and the things that I've learned about how to get started with teams and the things that I wish I had known about all of this stuff along the way earlier in my career. I apologize as well. I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of the atmosphere we're in. So I'm in my study. I'm by myself, but that's a very busy road. So if you get lots of noise, it's just traffic, and hopefully it won't be too disruptive. But getting right into it, being deliberate about team building. For me, I think a lot of people forget about why we hire coaches. So when I was putting this together, obviously I want to show you a tool called the user manual to me, but it made me really stop and reflect. What is it? Why do you hire me instead of, all the wonderful, we could signpost people to all kinds of things, whether that be LinkedIn Learning now or courses or letting people get stuck in. And the one thing that kept coming up as I was reflecting was the word motivation. And, coaches in the classic sense of the word, especially, if you think about a team coach, a true team coach, they're there to help you dig deep, motivate yourself, find a reason to strive when you perhaps are tapped out, all that good stuff. And, a good starting place is the dictionary as well. So, if motivation is the classic Cambridge definition of a reason or reasons for acting or behaving in a particular way, my job as a coach is maybe for, the sense of guidance and getting you refocused whenever perhaps the times get a little bit tougher, as well as teaching you through the 5 stances that we use as coaches, whether that be facilitation or consulting. I just wanted to reflect on why do we coach? Why do we use coaches? And what are we doing well? What are we not doing so well? And forgive me as I try and change my slides. So, okay. So, and then I thought, well, yeah, I'm a coach. I'm an agile coach. I'm an enterprise coach, but there are many coaches. Lots of us are coaches. You can have a manager operating as a coach. And in fact, the best managers do conduct themselves as coaching. Coaches will ask you, what do you need to be better as a person? What can I do for you? And for me, those are the managers who have made the biggest impact in my career. And then, of course, you can hire somebody like me, or maybe some of you, who have a little bit of a structured agenda. So we kind of know what good looks like, similar to a Wimbledon coach. If you tell a tennis coach you want to get to Wimbledon, for example, they're going to tell you, here's some techniques, let's practice. I'm going to put you on a regime, but also whenever your positioning is a little off, I might help you to get the technique mastered, or whatever I can do to support to get you on the path to achieving that goal. And then, of course, the teammates. So I'm bringing this up mainly because, anybody within a team, a good team, should be able to feel empowered to step in and out of the coaching principle. And for me, I've seen some good and some bad, and I'm sure that you have as well. But for me, I think that there are sort of 4 key categories that I've seen over time, and some of them good, some of them effective, but probably a bit more frightening than they need to be. And for me, again, as I was reflecting, putting this talk together, for me, really, to be a really good coach, it's about strengthening the mind and the body and the spirit together. because that's the unit that is a human being, and that's the unit that really matters. Yes, even in technology teams. So why do we do a team thing? What's this team thing about anyway, right? Like, we put together teams because the rewards of accomplishing something together are in theory far greater than what we can do on our own. Otherwise, we would just be, single individuals and not organizing at all. And I think that that's a very important thing to remember as we keep in mind the mantra, coaching the person rather than the problem. So coaching styles, if I go into this, and hopefully you'll see a few of these that have come across in your career as well. First one being the defeatist. I see so many coaches who have just been there, done that, are affected by circumstance, or perhaps they've come in. I see a lot of this with Scrum Masters as well. They think, oh, well, that person, that team is fantastic. They have this amazing developer, and I have this team. And they basically are pessimists. They kind of come in, do the day job, help, they're there to get things done. They're not very passionate. They just kind of turn the handle on the job. Then we've got the narcissist, and the narcissists are, often really good, but actually can do a little bit more harm than good in the organization and the cultures, because it's all about my team, and, everything is about winning. Everything is about constantly not just being better, but the best, or the criticisms other than just the holistic picture of the team and how we're doing as a whole. You sometimes can see a narcissist as somebody who really thinks that a part of being a coach is, being the tough guy, being the one who is telling a team that the ways in which they're rubbish and let me help you change. And you can win like that. People win, state tournaments and, championships and World Cups with narcissists, but it doesn't mean that that is necessarily a fun experience for your team, and certainly for individuals as well. Then we have the strategist, right? And the strategist for me is a brilliant, amazing executioner of amazing technique. If you were a coach in a sports sense, they might be somebody with a clipboard and running that program to the hilt. But the pitfalls of a strategist, and again, what you'll notice is that you want to have a bit of the good things in all of these things, right? But the strategist as well has to be careful, because some of the most effective people who were strategists, the world of gymnastics comes to mind. How many times have we seen people be forced to work through, pain and injury, and, feeling broken when they leave, when they're no longer, at the top of their game. And then we have the altruist. And an altruist for me is who I strive to be. And I will say, as I look at this on screen, really, the 4 characteristics are all part of my personality on any given day. We're all human beings. But if we're all striving to be kind of an altruist, which is, that focusing on the fundamentals of whatever the concept you're implementing, whether it be a game, a technique, an agile framework, whatever you're doing to coach that team for performance, it's about them, isn't it? It's about making it, acknowledging the human side of them as well, but also making sure that you're really, really honoring and respecting the holistic individual, because it really is more about the devotion to others, mentoring people, all of those fantastic qualities. And I can see lots of stuff going on in the chat, but I dare not click on it. So just keep me right if you have anything you want to ask me as we go. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that we've all seen qualities about this in ourselves, and, amongst others that we've both enjoyed and not so enjoyed working with. I know that I have, even in myself, as I say. So I guess the point is the how matters. And that's why I wanted to begin this way, because, our job is to be, in my opinion, as a coach, is to be extremely mindful of what we say and do, because how we do that really matters. Everything we say to an individual will affect their performance and shape their reality, because there is no one shared reality, unfortunately. Many perceptions of the same reality happening all at once. And who knows how we might affect somebody personally or emotionally or spiritually. And certainly as a whole, that affects their performance. yes, even in technical teams. So every good coach, the altruists, they tend to know that the magic happens when the whole person is vibrant. That's the most important thing to me. So if you only coach the execution of the fundamentals, that's all you're going to get back. If you win your championships and or get things over the line in our world, and from an agile sense, is that really all that matters? Or are we simply perpetuating teams that, perhaps are walking around lesser inside? Only time will tell for you as a team. So for me, that trust between coach and individual, what you need in order to be able to, get the spirit of receiving feedback in the spirit it was intended, being able to, really, really know in your heart that they're ready to hear feedback, as well as just some growth or technique, when in actual fact, they're very busy people, very people who are perhaps struggling in other aspects of their lives. All of these things are what I'm mindful as a coach. And I like to cover this because so many of us find ourselves in the world of coaching. I know that I did before I even had gotten qualified in any realm of coaching. I'm really grateful that I've had training with ICF as well as IC Agile. But for a really long time, many of us just find ourselves in this world, right? And we're conducting ourselves, in the way that we've been shown, good, bad, and ugly, whether it's the way we've kind of cultivated, intended to be, concertedly tried to be, emulating somebody we've liked, trying to reverse emulate things that we haven't, and so being that little bit deliberate can be quite helpful as well. So it's a lot more about leading than dictating. And that took me a long time to really understand how to shape a team, to really affect a team, and especially whenever we're delivering at the same time. So, when I'm frustrated, anytime I'm frustrated with the way that we're going as a team, I come back to what I feel is the ultimate goal as a coach, and that is to motivate change emotionally, physically, mentally, and yes, again, that's even a technical team. So yeah, we all need to embrace our intrinsic style of coaching. However, a constant assessment of self and those we affect who are in our care. And I wonder if sometimes we think about the fact that they are in our care in the moments they interact with us. Their whole being is in our care. And what we do to them, they will do and have a knock-on effect to their whole day and their interactions thereafter. And that's the kind of mindful coach that I try to be. Not that I am often perfect at that. So yeah, if we are able to focus on that, then it only heightens our ability to motivate and lead. Coach the person, not the problem. Forgive me, I can't display my whole screen here for some reason. So I like to tell people in my interviews and pitches that I'm a very playful coach. I really believe in gamification. I believe in injecting moments of play and learning through games. I'm a Lego Serious Play facilitator as well. And I just think that sometimes that moment of pause can really help you infuse by accident. Just a wonderful, playful, personal connection first kind of culture. And I love that old saying about boiling a frog, that if you very slowly increase that temperature, they actually don't notice. And I personally think that agile games, anything that you can do in the realm of play is a lot like that, just no heat required. So again, my key points from here are, injecting gamification, making space for human connection. Making space is something we're often not good at when we're in the middle of delivery as well. And making sure that we have as our North Star that it's not just about being busy. So yeah, core benefits, because I'm still feeling like I have to convince you at this point. But boosting familiarity between the team members, and that is truly every individual with every other individual, which takes quite some time to build. Increasing engagement and enthusiasm, improving creativity and problem solving, and of course, promoting your team's cohesion. So enter the user manual to me, and I wanted to show you warts and all how I do this with the team, right? So the first half of this is me just convincing you why I think this is important if you're in the position of coaching, which I hope that I did an okay job at explaining that any of us could be a coach at any given time, even if it's an unwilling one or an unwitting one, right? And for me, a really great tool when I'm coming into any team, especially one that's been established, or perhaps they're a change averse team or a reluctant coachee. The user manual to me is a moment of pause, because they need to know me as a coach. They need to see that I'm a human being, and I really need to temperature check my style and the things that they need from me as well. So in my humble opinion, something like this is a great session to reset a team, a department, and to make space for me as a new coach to quickly build that rapport and the human connections within that team as well. So the first thing, as ever, you'll be more than familiar with the humble check-in or how's the weather with you. You can use any technique you want, but we always get them talking, because many times they'll not be used to this way of working. And I want to show them the benefits of agility and some of the techniques we use in Agile coaching as soon as we begin a session. So this is often typically what I would run when starting from scratch, is to get a director or someone who's in the transformation space, someone that you might use a liberating structures technique like celebrity interview or fireside chat. Just talk about the change, why we're doing this and where we're going, and just expressing that initial excitement and enthusiasm. I then may, and this is a real example of one that I've run in the not too distant past, which I hope I've anonymized, probably we'll see very quickly. But again, I try to drink my own champagne, right? So I'm trying to set some working agreements for the session, make sure that I've got everyone covered in the way that they want, and then to explain to them that this is a psychological safety session. And the point is that we're going to learn about the ways that we are similar or different, be deliberate about building that relationship in our team, and creating an open space where people can speak up when it counts. From there, we might have any number of boot camp agenda type points to take them through and so forth. Working agreement, this is something that I might put on screen as like a initial starter for 10. The hope is that we build that out. I'll put them into Miro or Mural, depending on your favorite poison there, and get them to get involved in taking an action. It's the classic stuff that you have probably already seen with Agile coaching. Yeah, and this is me now in full presentation mode. I used to run the user manual to me, just where I've already given everybody a template, they feed it back to me, and then we go straight into a session and we make a quiz, or we might have a drink, or whatever. But what I would find, especially when COVID hit, was that some people, unfortunately, there will always be one or two in every team that just truly think, oh, if I had just been left alone, I could have finished that code merge, or, this was pointless, or even this was nice to hear about you, but I don't understand the point. And so I built in this part of my presentation, particularly to explain to them, why we're here, and to take a second to remember that, yes, at work, we're still human, right? Because I think that that's too often very lost, right? So, I'll read on screen. I'm mindful that I talk a lot as I've got the words on screen that I would have, so you probably already read them. But, for me, team building is key, because a team is usually simply recruited through good hiring practices, right? We know what skills we need. We've done some great interviews, and in theory, on paper, we've hired for culture and, a fit. But for me, a really great team is built, and that's based on ensuring that you've got great relationships and mutual respect. And for me, I think that we can be more deliberate about that and making that a little bit more intentional as we go. And literally, the rest of this is exactly what I would say to any team. I will spell out that sometimes people are a puzzle, and that's okay. The issue at hand is more than simply a lack of familiarity. It's the time that it can take to build those connections. A lot of people will work with people for a year or two and still not really fully understand why so-and-so acts a certain way, or what's really going on at home, or, perhaps thinking someone is grumpy, and I just really feel that if we take time out like this to talk about the ways that we're different, and also to accept and fully realize that we may never know those things. We may, as much as we talk about bringing our whole selves to work, we may not actually want to reveal what our past traumas are, but it's important that we remember that we've got them, right? So, every single one of us will bring with us preconceived notions, experiences, cultures, patterns of behavior. All of those things have helped us cope at this point in our career and in our lives. And in some ways, they're still serving us, and in some ways, they don't. Sometimes we realize that, and sometimes we don't. And although this might sound silly to tell a team straight out the gate, I think that it's, in my experience, quite an important piece of the puzzle that we just don't talk about at work, right? And then I go into a bit of the Tuckman model. I remind them that the Tuckman model, it's not like it's a wonderful curve that naturally flows, right? The curve can be steep, and actually you can go back and forth between storming and norming. Add a couple of people to the team, or someone retires or moves to a different department or becomes a manager, or we change framework and we no longer have scrum masters. You can ebb and flow quite a lot between these quadrants, right? And I just think that for some people, although they know, that forming, storming, norming thing, they sometimes aren't fully aware that, it's a deliberate, process-driven thing. And in my opinion, that steep curve that can be made less steep by building in team building and other exercises, whether it be play, all the good things that we talked about, even changing up some of your retrospective techniques, all of those little stolen moments to inject some personality and laughter. That's what it's all about. So I believe, again, that by deliberately facilitating a virtual bit of laughter, we can make single players working remotely get on the road to feeling like a little bit more of a cohesive unit, a little bit more like they certainly understand the goal, that they're working as a team and have a common one, and certainly are on an even playing field, building their connections earlier and making that Tuckman curve just that little bit less steep. So a key one that I like to highlight and have literally highlighted on the slide is that this is especially important when you have multiple cultural backgrounds. I'm a Balti American. Perhaps I've been sort of, I don't know, sanitized in some ways after living in the UK for 17 years, but you would be surprised at how much I can piss off a Brit. So, imagine what it is like for some. I have actually, everything has a fashion. So there was a long time when we were outsourcing things to India and then bringing it back in. And we were doing a lot in the Agile space, speaking about the power of co-location and how everybody has to be in the same area. And then, we were undoing that because, third party and offshore resource was less expensive. That was just a practical reality for a lot of IT departments and directors, right? And if you actually went to the Philippines or to India and you sat there, it was so funny being on the two sides of the ocean, right? So I would be in the UK or in the US, and you could hear people being like, why won't they speak? And feeling very frustrated and desperately trying to get them to share the information because they're the experts, right? They're the ones who are building this stuff. They're the ones who can tell us where the bodies are. They're the ones who can tell us where the risk is or the options or the more creative solution or the faster thing. But we just couldn't get them to speak. But whenever you actually go out there and they're all on mute and they're terrified, they're worried about how they're going to be perceived. They're worried about, if I tell them that they're wrong, will they receive that well? If I raise a question, will it make me look like less of an expert than I am? Or even worse, for some people, even though their English is good for their country, perhaps they're acutely aware that occasionally people from the West can't understand them. It's a different dynamic to watch people go through what I can only describe as anguish in those moments when they're trying to really connect and to really determine what was appropriate in terms of behavior and what they say and when they say it. So I don't think that very many people actively are mindful enough about how key this actually is and taking the time to say each other's names properly even, right? It's, for me, it's about adding in things like the icebreakers, the gamification of activities, teaching through games. All of this will help us develop trust. Each person unknowingly building those one-to-one relationships with each and every one of our extended members of the team. And again, that takes time to be authentic. It really takes time. But the 5 circles here on the left, That's each individual having to connect again with each and every individual. That's a lot. That's a lot. And it's all different styles. And it made me reflect, Kylie's dog was too timely at the beginning of this call, actually, because, we do the same with animals. If we adopt one and add another to our family, everybody has a different style. Everybody has a natural disposition. Some people are shy. Some people have a big personality and they mean no harm, but they terrify people, or they seem very compelling. And perhaps I know more than them, but I don't realize that. And I'm a little bit nervous about bringing that to work as well. And of course, more often than not, and you'll see this in somebody's user manual to me, I'll show you an example. Some people bring pronounced trauma to work. Some people live with such a pronounced trauma that they don't feel comfortable opening up for fear that they get a question that they don't know how to answer, again, at work, right? So as much as I kind of harped on about, people in India wondering, or people in the Philippines wondering, oh, how will I be perceived, good or bad or the ugly? Do they really want the answer? Really, even amongst ourselves, even though we speak the same language, perhaps we're born in the same town, we have the same things too. So for me, next point in the presentation would be about making sure that people take time to notice. So the user manual to me isn't just reading a template about who I am and what I like and who my partner is, or our children or any of those things. That's a cold reading, right? It's about the role of facilitation of, the banter and making sure that people take time to notice perhaps where we need to bend, right? Perhaps where, you are just not a morning person and I keep bothering you at 8:30, So, it's, I think for me, important to point out that every single person has a professional and personal style. And as a coach, I need to know, at least what makes you tick, how I need time to coach you, but I also certainly need to respect your time to get your work done. So the point being, colleagues often have more in common than we immediately see. So again, think about getting over that curve a little bit faster and what we can do to be deliberate about that. That's what it's all about. So yeah, and before we start, I literally, sometimes I'll ask them to grab a pen and paper or some Post-it notes, and I'll ask them, to reflect on 3 things as we go through each and every person's user manual. Those things are, what key themes do you pick up amongst us as a team, right? Are all of us coffee drinkers? Is there one person that doesn't, have coffee at all? Do you have something in common with someone you didn't know about before? And quite critically, did you identify something that you can do or not do in order to support a colleague or their working style? So I've very frequently will work in teams, especially Scottish teams, where somebody just is very banter focused. Is a wonderful team, but perhaps culturally the swearing in the banter is very offensive or intimidating in some way. If I know that I'm a bit sweary, right? If you know that I'm a bit sweary and I make a joke and I've sworn, then you kind of have a heads up that it's not personal, and I have a heads up that bothers you, and I'll kind of keep a lid on it, kind of thing. So yeah, that's the whole point. So this is a real team that I've facilitated with. Again, I would have sent out the template for the user manual to me. Sometimes the template will be a 1-pager. On certain occasions, like when I was with Adidas, we were having a really hard time understanding what each person could bring to the table because they were all financial directors and CFOs and that sort of thing. And, they wanted to get a flavor of, the past 5 projects that you've worked on, the legal entities that you've reorganized, the projects and so forth, and but for this particular session, I've just included the 1 slide so you can get a flavor of, what we tend to talk about and how we facilitate it. But I always collate them together into kind of a front slide, and we begin after I give the pitch on why we're doing this and why this is useful and why we're here, why are we bothering you with this time, right? So this is mine. I tell people I'm an introvert, that I am the result of a hell of a lot of courses and coaching of my own. I'll then go into, exactly all the things that make me me. I'll make sure that I tell them that, I'm often here by myself. My other half is a lieutenant colonel in the British Army. I travel for work and I'm kind of a phone addict. I've written a lot more on here than I go into detail about, right? The main things for me as a coach is that I want them to know that, especially if this is my first session, or perhaps I'm resetting them to understand, what some of these techniques are that we use. I'll tell them, I'll ask you to give me a fist of 5 for a return on time invested, so they can kind of expect that. And we'll do that at the end of the session as well. I'll tell them my working time and my working pattern if I'm working in an odd one, or if I'm respecting my own, time zone, depending on each role that I'm doing. I might be doing different hours, different places, and they need to know that I get buried in email because I have multiple clients. That's important for them to know. If you need me, WhatsApp me. Teams, better way to reach me. And just really what I'm trying to do is to strike up a bit of rapport. That's all it's about. You'll notice that I've tried to put lots of graphics in here. And again, this is kind of evolved because I used to just run this as a regular quick and dirty template. And what I realized was that the more you can add pictures from your day-to-day life, and you'll see that a lot of people really do decorate them. They'll include pictures of their home, of projects that perhaps people have been acutely aware because of the noise that have been going on during lockdown. I will make sure that I share with them that I actually suffer with anxiety. I want them to know that this is safe. I'm not better than you. I'm here to support you. I'm a little sweary. I'm a human being, right? But dear God, don't ask me to come to an 8 o'clock meeting because I'll probably struggle. All of these things just to set that scene with them to know how to give theirs. Because some people painstakingly, you would be surprised at how hard this is for some people to actually, even write something down about themselves. Honestly, every time I run this, I'm increasingly given something new. What do I share, Elle? How much is too far? And they will emulate, and I'll send this out as a populated template as well. Just so that they can have an idea of where the hell do I start. And it's funny, like a lot of people think that they're an extrovert, but in reality, whenever it comes to where's the line between work and home, even they struggle, right? So do expect that, some people might need a little bit of help or coaching in the background. Does anybody have anything they want to ask me or, comment before I show you something that I got recently that I wasn't expecting? All good? Good. All right. So recently I received, this is a great one. So this guy really struggled with knowing what exactly I was trying to share, what's okay. He was a new line manager to his people. We had to have a one-to-one coaching session to, he just really was struggling to populate something. But this is the result of an output of, I guess what I'm trying to highlight here is that especially for leaders, new leaders, they might actually need some assistance from you in order to share the right level of things with their new direct reports, that sort of thing. So don't forget that sometimes our role as a coach, we might need to help people in that one-to-one basis as well. This is the one that I wasn't expecting to receive and that I had not received before, but this was an absolute golden moment of growth for me. And I'll be ever grateful for it because this is the result of our coaching session. He actually, if you had seen what he wrote, this gentleman, who actually was a sweet, lovely, lovely man, right? All he was willing to say was, I don't like to talk about my personal life. And some of the comments, the way it was written as well, was extremely abrasive. You would have been if I had been early in my career, right, I would have been quite frightened of this gentleman, the way he had written this. So this, again, was the output of a coaching session and help to kind of say, is this who you want to be? Is this how you want to portray yourself? Is this how you want to share with your team, right? And the reality is, I could have let this really trigger me. And as I really reflected and really, again, remember that adage, coach the person, not the problem, coach the person, not the behavior. Similarly, in my ICF coaching, I've done some recent work with the prison service, for example. And I'll tell you one thing, when somebody's behavior is difficult or whatever, the only thing you can do as a coach in that moment is to really focus on the human being who did not get something that you got or were able to obtain later, right? And that's the hardest part to hold in your mind's eye. But the reality was, this was a person who had gone through just a lifetime of severe trauma and who lived with chronic pain and who was terrified of opening up at all at work. And, when it came time for him to share this, the team were able, the way I facilitated this specifically was to say, listen, our colleague has really struggled to share and to know what might be helpful. So I'd like to run this part a little bit differently. And, he can give a flavor of what he is and who he is and, getting to know all of us. But I'd love for you to ask him questions. And the team really pitched in. They really, really held their arms around this man. And by the end of it, I'm not kidding, I saw a complete change, a total change in a human being who started out unbelievably abrasive. Again, things I struggle with, that box was, I struggle with sharing anything about my private life because I'm a private person and I don't appreciate these kinds of activities. It was very off-putting, right? So honestly, it's worth your time to take the interest in the human being that's in front of you. It's about being vibrant. If one person in your team feels less than vibrant, it absolutely does have a knock-on effect on the rest of the team. A lot of the subtleties that we don't even appreciate as we go through life and work. Again, I speak about the knock-on effect of what I say to someone, what you say to someone may ruin or absolutely uplift a day. But yeah, these things, what this came out of, it turned out he had this wonderful family who was unbelievably proud of, was completely self-made, had just bought a home when at one point he was struggling and had really difficult personal circumstances throughout his entire childhood and young adulthood. It was honestly one of the most beautiful and uplifting things that I've seen shift in a person. And again, when we were finished going through that with that team, it was very magical. And I can honestly say to you, I have yet to do this in a team where I didn't see what I can only describe as quite a sparkle, or like a shimmer that wasn't there before. And I wish that I was exaggerating there, but especially as we reflect and people are able to start having that wonderful banter, which not every culture has. Scottish people are very good at that, right? But being able to pick up the themes that we have in common, things that we didn't know about one another, things that, perhaps I might do that would piss you off if I didn't ask, right? All those good things. And also we can use some tools like I've recently incorporated a spreadsheet that helps me visualize the working hours, especially when teams are working across different time zones. So sometimes it can be quite hard, as you know, to figure out when do we work synchronously together versus when does it make sense to work alone? When can we have a stand up? When is the good timing? And to show those hours of overlap is quite helpful. And again, you end up with really great team working agreements, ones that aren't just we start and end on time or, like rich things about who they want to be as a team. It's actually quite empowering. And then as always, I end with return on time invested. And I have yet to get less than a 4. When I used to run this without this sort of business case for it, the bit that at the beginning that speaks about how, good teams are deliberately built, I would get a number of 4s, at least 2 or 3, a number of 3s, 2 or 3 3s within a team, especially if they were a larger team of sort of 9 to 11. And literally, I just thought, we're just not getting it. So that's why I tack that on at the beginning. So yeah, I usually count down. I ask them to put the return on time invested in the chat box, and we go from there. And what I feel that I get out of this is a team that in future, when we infuse other games, whether they be agile games for learning or icebreakers at the beginning or building in time for, just quizzes or whatever may happen, they're a lot more up for it. And they also understand the intention. They're not so worried about, oh, we've got a coach in. What's this agile stuff about? Twice the work and half the time? Damn you, Jeff Sutherland. Are they making us redundant? That's what I usually am coming into for a lot of places anyway. So anyway, that's it. That's my presentation. I really think it's worth being deliberate about team building, and I hope that you'll agree. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elle. That was a great talk, very enjoyable. Does anyone have any questions for Elle? You will have to take yourself off mute because we muted you all at the start. A whole bunch of thank yous in the chat. I don't see any questions though. Out of curiosity, did you get a 5 from the really private individual? That's from Nicole.
I do sometimes get a 5. Occasionally I get a 5, believe it or not.
Excellent. With that, then we will leave it there.